Dawn Crey was a woman that was part of a series of investigative stories written in 2001 by Sun reporters Lindsay Kynes, Kim Bolin, and Laurie Colbert into how many women from the downtown east side of Vancouver were disappearing and why little was being done to prevent it. The downtown east side of Vancouver is one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, and it has a disproportionate high level of drug use, homelessness, crime, poverty, mental illness, and sex work. As a child, Dawn lived with her family in Hope, BC. When she was 3 years old, her father died from a massive heart attack in her arms. This scarred her for the rest of her life, and she blamed herself for his death. After her father's death, her family eventually broke apart, and Dawn spent her young life in foster care. Her foster family said that she was a model child and then began to rebel at age 13. Dawn had met a boy that introduced her to drugs. People remember Dawn as being a friendly, happy, energetic young girl and very beautiful. At the age of 14, Dawn was experimenting with harder drugs such as LSD. In 1975, at the age of 16, Dawn had become pregnant and wanted a better life for her child. She gave her child up for adoption to her loving foster parents because she felt that she was inadequate to be his mother. Dawn eventually moved to Vancouver. For several months in 1979 and 80, she attended high school equivalency courses. Fellow students remember her as a pretty young woman with large brown eyes. It was during this time that Dawn began hanging out with some sketchy people, and she dropped out of school. These people talked her into prostitution. They gave her heroin to help her feel more relaxed about the experience. Dawn was 18 years old, and she began selling heroin to support her addiction. Between 1979 and 1985, Dawn had been convicted at least 9 times for possession, weapons offenses, theft, and car theft. Dawn eventually made her way back to Chilliwack and began experiencing mental health issues. She was hallucinating and hearing voices. Her family desperately tried to intervene and get her help, the help that she needed, but it was hard to keep her interested in recovery. Dawn made her way back to Vancouver. It was there that she assaulted a family friend and was admitted to the Forensic Psychiatric Institute in Port Coquitlam in 1987. While in treatment, she gained weight and stopped hallucinating. After her release, she moved to Abbotsford and lived there for 4 years, her doctors prescribing her methadone so she could kick the heroin habit. Dawn tried to visit her son, but the relationship was strained and he felt uncomfortable around her. Her life in Abbotsford and area was turbulent, with run-ins with the police. She eventually moved back to Vancouver and was often afraid of the people that surrounded her. They often accused her of stashing drugs away from them and threatened her life. One evening, Dawn's door was kicked in and she was attacked with battery acid. It soaked her face, cheeks, forehead, and the top of her head and hands. She didn't see who did it and never filed a police report. The pain was unbearable and the disfigurement was a horrible thing for her to bear. She began injecting painkillers and heroin. She refused to see anyone and would only come out at night so people wouldn't look at her. It took 3 years for Dawn's hair to grow back and her scars to heal over. The attack left her with scars on her forehead, along the sides of her face, and on her fingers. In early fall 2000, just months before Dawn disappeared, family members said that she had a new outlook on life. She wanted to clean up her life and work with troubled youth in Chilliwack. She wanted to go back to school. She was trying to stop her heroin habit. She was also talking about someone who was out to kill her. Her family once again tried to intervene. They tried to help her into treatment, but Dawn wouldn't have it. On December 11th, 2000, Dawn's doctor reported her as missing after she failed to show up to her methadone treatments in November. Vancouver Police said that she was last seen on November 1st near Main and Hastings. Dawn hasn't picked up any of her assistance checks since November 2000. She expressed that she did not feel safe at the Balmoral Hotel where she last lived. Her DNA was located on clothing found in the Picton farm, and while charges were recommended by investigators, they were not approved by the Crown. Dawn Teresa Crey was 42 years old at the time of her disappearance. If you have any information as to where Dawn is, please contact the Vancouver Police Department at 604-717-3321, file number 00-280034. If you would like to read a more in-depth article about Dawn Crey and her life, I will leave a link down in the comments below.